Okay, everybody. And try to look more like Jean. McChina. Yeah. I think we're missing Mr. Lui Kwan. I figure you got a better chance of trying to cancel now than let me know when you're supposed to. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for your patience. And I would note the appearances of Cindy and William Freitas at 9:24. Good morning to you both. And before we commence, I need to ask Mr. Ng if you wouldn't give us the offer of proof again so that we have a clear record of what that is.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We call Dr. Ed Stone. Dr. Stone is the Executive Director of TMT International Observatory, LLC. He has a PhD in physics from the University of Chicago. He has been a member of the faculty of Caltech and a former director of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Dr. Stone joined TMT in 2004. He will testify with regard to the following matters: the organization and purpose of TMT International Observatory, LLC, the background of the international efforts to fulfill the critical scientific need for optical infrared telescopes in the 30-meter primary mirror size, and he will discuss the scientific value of the TMT telescope. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ng. And I'm addressing myself to the individual sitting in the witness chair. Sir, could you state your name, please?
Okay. Edward Stone.
And sir, may I ask you to take the oath, please? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matters before this tribunal shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Stone, do you have your written statement called Testimony of Edward C. Stone in front of you?
Yes.
And can you tell us how many pages that is?
Just a moment. Five pages.
And, sir, although you haven't signed it, can you affirm while under oath that this indeed is your statement?
Yes, this is my statement.
And everything therein is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
All right. Sir, You have up to 10 minutes to give a summary of your testimony.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. May I ask you to bring the microphone a little bit closer to yourself? Great. We need to hear you loud and clear.
All right, very good. TMT is just the next step in a 400-year-old journey of discovery of the universe. It really started with Galileo in 1610 when he first turned a telescope. I'm sorry? Go slower. Okay. The journey first began in 1610 when Galileo turned his newly developed telescope on the planet Jupiter and saw that there were moons orbiting the planet. Until that time, everything was assumed to be orbiting the Earth being the center of the universe. We now know that that was completely wrong, and that was the first major step in this journey of discovery that continues. Today, the latest journey, step in the journey is what's on Mauna Kea. That is the Subaru telescope, the Gemini telescope, the two Keck 10-meter telescopes are the current generation of seeing the most distant objects and the faintest objects that have been seen. And have been major discoveries using the telescopes on Mauna Kea. For instance, it has been discovered that there's a massive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. 4 million suns of mass are in that black hole. That was a prize-winning discovery. Another prize-winning discovery is that the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate, indicating there's some form of dark energy, and it's called dark energy because we can't see it, we don't know what it is, but there's no doubt that there is something pushing the universe apart at an increasing rate. Why do we need still another generation? We need it in order to see the very first stars that formed in the universe 13.4 billion years ago. We believe that's when the first stars were created and there was first starlight. But it's very faint because it's very far away. And we also know there are lots of planets orbiting other stars in our own Milky Way galaxy. And they have many planets orbiting the stars, but they're very faint because they're small. And so, again, we need to collect even more light than the mighty telescopes on Mauna Kea do today. And that's where the 30-meter telescope comes in. Its mirror is 3 times the diameter of the Keck mirror. 30 meters, that's 98 feet compared to the 10-meter Keck telescopes. That factor of 3, though, in diameter means 9 times more light is collected because that's 9 times more area. And that light is focused on a spot on the camera of 1/9 the area. So it's 81 times brighter with a 30-meter telescope than it is with the Keck, which is currently the best in the world. That factor of 81 should allow us to see the first stars and galaxies as they formed great distances from here, and to study the other worlds orbiting nearby stars in our own Milky Way galaxy. One night on a 30-meter telescope would take 81 nights on the Keck telescopes and would never be done. That's just too much time. And so it will open up. This is another great leap in the journey. This is not a new idea. In fact, the National Academy of Sciences recommended that there's a priority for a 30-meter segmented mirror telescope in the year 2000. And in the year 2003, Caltech and the University of California formed a corporation called the TMT Observatory Corporation with the intent of designing and building and operating a 30-meter telescope somewhere in the world, and we eventually chose Mauna Kea as the best place to put that telescope. Since that initial phase, we've added other partners. AURO, the American Association for the University for Research in Astronomy, was an early partner. And is not now a partner, but Canada was an early partner. Then we had Japan as a later partner, China, and India. So we now have 6 partners that are part of the project. Because it's important that each partner will contribute a certain amount of money, and that amount of money is in fact differs from partner to partner, the observing time and the ownership should be scaled with how much their contribution was. If you invested 20% in the cost, then you should, in fact, get 20% of the observing time and the use of the telescope. But that meant they could not be part of TMT Corporation because that's a California corporation in which every member has the same vote. And that was not, in fact, consistent with the idea that if you contributed twice as much, you should get twice as much time. That's the reason we had to create another corporation called the TMT International Observatory, TIO. It's a Delaware corporation that allows members to have different shares in their votes. And so a 10% ownership means 10% of the observing time and 10% of the voting power. So we formed that corporation in 2014, the TMT Observatory Corporation turned over what it had developed to the TMT International Observatory, and that's now the observatory, which in fact has the sublease and has been pursuing this new part of the journey. So that's, I think, a quick summary of what my testimony is about.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lui Kwan.
Morning, Dr. Stone.
Good morning.
You know, some of the parties, I know you've actually addressed. I know you've addressed the matter of the TMT Observatory Corporation. You know, there have been questions asked of other witnesses regarding the TMT Observatory Corporation. And I assume you're familiar with this.
Yes.
The TMT Corporation,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Is it a California nonprofit membership corporation? Is that correct?
Which are you talking about?
The TMT Observatory Corporation.
That's a California, yes, that's a California nonprofit.
Because you had mentioned that the LLC, the TMT International Observatory LLC, was a Delaware LLC. Is that correct?
That's a Delaware nonprofit, yes.
So who were the initial members again of the TMT Corporation?
The original corporation, the Caltech and the University of California were the two members of the corporation and controlled it.
And what were the other members that joined after that?
Well, we associate, one of the early associates was Canada, which is now a full member of TIO, and then Japan, China, and India.
And you had mentioned that these 6 partners were all equal partners under the rules of the California Nonprofit Membership Corporation. Is that correct?
If they had joined TMT Observatory, the TMT Corporation, they would have been equal partners. But in fact, they did not join that corporation. They joined the LLC, where they are proportional.
So was there a letter of intent between Caltech, the University of California, the Canadian universities, and the National Astronomy Observatory of Japan?
Yes, there was.
When was this?
I think it was 2011, I believe.
And do you recall the purpose of the letter of intent?
The purpose of the letter of intent was to state that this group of 6 institutions would work together to essentially establish the TIO. And so this was a statement of intent, which then allowed us to proceed with the detailed negotiations.
So how was this implemented, actually? How was that implemented, the formation of the TIO?
We developed an agreement among the partners. We have a master agreement, and we have a company agreement which defines the nature of this LLC and the voting nature of the different, we established what the commitments would be for each partner in establishing a TMT building and designing and building it. Those were all part of creating the documentation, which then became official in May of 2014. That's when it became active, and that's when when things were transferred from TMT Observatory Corp to TIO.
So what did that mean for the TMT project once that happened in May of 2014?
Well, the project now is, if you like, owned by TIO and is overseen by the board of TIO, and the funding comes from the various agencies and universities to TIO, to the TIO project through TIO.
So, Dr. Stone, why is TMT an advancement in astronomy? Excuse me, Dr. Stone, why is TMT an advancement in astronomy when we have the capability to put telescopes in space like the Hubble?
To see the dimmest objects in the universe, you need to collect a lot of light, and this is a much larger telescope than anything you can afford to put in space today. The Hubble telescope is just, I think, 2.4 meters compared to the Keck's, which are 10, and the TMT, which would be 30 meters. That's 98 feet. There's no way to launch a 98-foot mirror into space at this time. Now, perhaps someday that will happen, but today, if you want to collect that much light, you need to build it on the Earth.
Well, MaunaKea already has, it's already home to the Keck telescopes, the Keck twins, which also have adaptive optics as well, correct?
Yes.
Why do we need the TMT project when we have a Keck?
Because we need because, in fact, there are objects which are too dim for even the Kecks to be able to observe. The things which are very far away, we are seeing them as they were billions of years ago when they formed, and we can see back to the beginning of stars. But in fact, with the Keck telescopes, we cannot do that effectively because they're not sensitive enough. We need to collect more light in order to see the even dimmer objects at the distant universe, and also to see the very dim planets that orbit bright stars nearby.
You mentioned that TMT will be 81 times better at collecting light than the Keck.
Be 81 times more sensitive is the way I would say it. And so, in fact, the amount of time you need to expose would be 81 times shorter.
I see. So one night at TMT, 81 nights at
Keck.
Keck.
Yes.
So, well, let's figure this out. So first, the TMT diameter is 3 times that of the Keck telescope, correct?
Correct.
And therefore, it has 9 times?
9 times the area. That's right.
Okay. So the area of the telescope varies with the square of the radius of the primary mirror, is that correct?
Yes.
And what about the collecting area of the TMT as being 9 times that of the Keck?
It'd be 9 times that of Keck, which is currently the largest in the world.
So why does this make any difference in astronomy or in science?
If you want to see all the stars orbiting, for instance, this massive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, you need the improved sensitivity in order to even see the stars that are there. They're very dim, even though they're nearby in our galaxy. They're very small and very dim, and in order to see all the stars, we need to improve our sensitivity, and a factor of 81 will do that for us.
Okay, with this factor of 81, explain why TMT is so revolutionary when you compare it with Keck.
It's revolutionary just mainly because of its size. It's using the same technology as the Keck's, that is a segmented mirror. It's made of hexagonal segments. There are 36 in the Keck mirror. There will be 492 hexagonal segments in the TMT mirror, so it's much, much larger. But it's the same technology as the Keck's pioneered many years ago.
Thank you, Dr. Stone. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Pisciotta? Oh, I'm sorry, I should ask. Does anybody have any objections to Ms. Pisciotta and Ms. Ward changing places in terms of cross-examination? All right, thank you.
Aloha, Mr. Stone.
Aloha.
My name is Kealoha Pisciotta. Thanks for being here. I have to ask you some questions. I don't mean to be adversarial if they seem adversarial. It's just the nature of what we're in right now.
Can you move your microphone down a little bit?
Okay. Is this better?
That's better.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, just a second here. Let me open it up. You state that you were staff and later faculty member of Caltech. Is that
Yes.
correct? Caltech is the,
California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, California.
yes, thank you. What years did you become full professor at Caltech?
let's see, I arrived at Caltech in 1964, and it was 1976 when I became full professor.
So you were also the chair of the Division of Physics, Mathematics, and Astronomy from 1983 to 1988, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And, and in your written direct, you also served as director of Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL?
Correct.
Okay. And you also served as board of directors of the California Association for Research in Astronomy, or CARA, which has been responsible for building and operating the William M. Keck Observatory. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You state you joined the TMT Corporation in 2014?
2004.
Oh,
The TMT Observatory Corporation was 2004.
okay. And then, all right. So when did you join the TIO?
That was when we founded TIO, which was May of 2014.
And TIO, you were saying earlier, is
The TMT
made up of number of partners.
Yes, 6 partners. There's
And
6.
those partners included more than UC, University of California, and Caltech, right?
That's correct. Yes.
So I think you earlier named the partners. Okay. So are Gordon and Betty Moore of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation a part of the TMT Corporation or the TIO Corporation?
No.
You stated in your written direct that Mr. Moore of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation is a major funder. Isn't that correct?
Let me back up one step.
Okay.
They're not members of the corporation, but they do have observers at our board meetings.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so you also stated in your written direct that Mr. Moore of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation is a part of a major funder of the TMT. Is that correct?
The Gordon.
Let me object to that. This states the facts and evidence.
If you don't mind, could you ask the question, and maybe Dr. Stone can give us the accurate statement?
Well, he actually said that in his written direct, and he referred to them exactly as a major funder.
Okay, and maybe if you don't mind, I have the direct in front of me, so if you could
Show you
direct
what-
us
I'm
then.
going to object because that misstates his direct testimony. It indicates that the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation is the funder, not Mr. Moore.
Oh, okay. So again, if you could direct us to the.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just rephrase it then. Correct me. Is the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation a major funder of the TMT?
Yes.
When you say major, can you give us an idea of how much funding he has provided for the TMT?
I can't give you an exact number, but it's over $100 million. It's almost 200, I think.
Okay. Would you say that that of all the funders, he's provided the most funding?
Not he, it,
Or
the foundation.
the foundation? Mm-hmm.
Yes, to date, that's correct.
And can you explain that, is it true that Mr. Moore contributed to the creation of the Intel Pentium processor?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, Intel. I don't know about the processor, but he
Okay.
was at Intel.
Okay. So aside from NASA, Would you agree that some of the same partners that were involved in the NASA Keck Outrigger project, including CARA and Caltech, are part of the TMT Corporation or the TIO group?
Caltech and the University of California are members of CARA, and they're also members of TIO.
Okay. Oh, are they members of the TMT Corporation too?
They were, yes. Yes, they are still.
Okay. Okay. So does the TMT Corporation and the TIO both exist?
Yes.
One did not sort of replace the other? One did not replace the other?
Well, they both exist. Their role has changed, obviously.
Okay. And do you know who is on the Conservation District use application? Is it TMT Corporation
I
or
guess I
TIO?
don't know. I don't know.
Okay. So as director of CARA and the one responsible for the construction and operation of the Keck Observatory in 2003, then you would also have been involved in the NASA Keck Outrigger project lawsuit. Is that correct?
I'm aware of it. Yes, I was aware of it.
Okay. Yes. In 2003, was your job in CARA chairman or vice chairman of CARA?
I could figure that out, but I don't remember. It,
Okay.
it alternated every 3 years. That's so.
Okay. I should clarify. Can you tell us what CARA stands for?
The California Association for Research in Astronomy.
Okay, right. Okay. So, in your position as either chairman or vice chairman, were you responsible for building and/or operating the Keck Observatory?
The board, the CARA board is responsible, yes.
Okay. So you were aware that it was the Office of Hawaiian Affairs who challenged the NASA Keck Observatory's environmental assessment and finding of no significant impact, which was a FONSI back then.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of direct.
Where are we going with this, Ms. Pisciotta?
Well, he was in the position. I want to know how much he knows about the NASA lawsuit that was taken up on our behalf, actually.
Not an issue in this proceeding, so I ask for an offer of proof as to why
Yes.
that's necessary.
That's what I'm asking for. So with regard to your inquiries toward that NASA lawsuit that you're referring to, how does that connect up to our case?
I do want him to answer just a couple of questions on the findings of Judge Mulway, Susan Mulway, which were a part of that, because part of what we need to address is cumulative impact as well in this case. And significant and adverse impact is part of the 8 criteria. So I just want to ask him if he is aware of that.
Okay, Mr. Ng?
So let me object to that, Your Honor, because cumulative impact of prior telescopes is not a part of the 8 criteria. Criteria number 4 refers to the project's impact on the surrounding region, not cumulative impact. That's number 1. Number 2, if she wants to ask him a direct question about that, she should proceed to ask that question.
I agree with you. So I'm going to overrule the objection, but I will allow you, Ms. Pisciotta, rather, I'm going to sustain the objection, but I will allow you to ask the direct question about that.
Okay.
Okay?
Are you aware that the NASA EIS found that in 30 years of astronomy development on MaunaKea has resulted in adverse, significant, and substantial impact to the natural and cultural resources of Mauna Kea?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that MaunaKea Summit region, including the TMT project, sits within a conservation district and also in the middle of a historic district that is eligible for listing on both the state and federal registers of historic places?
Objection, Your Honor. Assumes facts, not in evidence. TMT project does not sit in the middle of the historic district.
Could you restate it so that it's
Okay.
precise?
Yeah. Are you aware that the MaunaKea Summit region, including the TMT project, sits within a conservation district and also within a historic district that is eligible for listing on both state and federal register of historic places?
Objection, Your Honor. No foundation that this witness has any knowledge about the historical register.
Could you ask him about that first, and then you can ask the second
Sure.
question?
Okay. On page 5 of your written direct, you state that in 2009 and 2010, BLNR adopted the CMP, which is the Comprehensive Management Plan, and subplans, including the cultural resource plans. And these plans commit the university to exercise responsible stewardship of MaunaKea and to ensure that astronomical activities are conducted in a manner that respects the cultural significance of MaunaKea and the environment and is responsive to the needs and concerns of Native Hawaiians and the public. Is that, did I quote that section properly? Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess.
I was just quoting your written direct from page 5.
Yes.
Okay. So have you read the cultural resource plan?
No.
Okay. You have not read it?
No.
But have you read any of those documents that you list in your written direct?
No.
Okay. So can I ask you, how did you write that section I just read you if you have not read those?
I don't have to read them to know that there are such plans have been formed. I have a large staff, which in fact has worked on these documents for some time.
But you did testify that you wrote that testimony yourself?
I wrote that, yes.
Okay. So how would so it's your understanding that the plans are implemented, though, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
How do you, as in the position that you hold, ensure that that statement is a correct statement if you have not read those documents?
I rely on my staff to inform me.
Okay. Well, has your staff informed you that Native Hawaiians attach religious and cultural significance to the historic properties within the historic district of MaunaKea?
I'm aware of that, yes.
Okay. Let's see. Are you aware that the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation is a council that is made up of presidential appointees, and it is the federal agency responsible for ensuring that federal agencies and/or federal undertakings comply with the National Historic Preservation Act?
Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond the scope and there's lacks foundation.
Could you set the foundation and also perhaps tell me where we're going with this?
Well, the CDUA requires that all county, state, and federal requirements and laws be met and followed. So we believe it's relevant, and we believe that he's the witness who can talk about it because he is the executive director of the TMT. And so really the buck has to stop with someone, and I think it's him.
All right, so could you then set the foundation? In other words, you have to establish that he knows about the act.
Sure. Let me try. I'll try, Mr. Are you aware that that the NASA Keck Observatory did complete historic preservation and the National Environmental Policy Act review processes.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Are you aware that the TMT, that the NASA and Keck, for example, did have to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act and the Historic Preservation Act review processes?
I don't remember.
Well, do you remember that the court had stated that your EA and finding of no significant impact was incorrect?
Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond the scope of his direct.
It's really not, because he was in charge of the Keck observatories during the period in which this lawsuit occurred, and he also was in charge of he was in the lawsuit, so I think he should know. NASA, Sean O'Keefe, and University of California and Caltech were involved as well. So I'm just trying to establish that he knows. It's in 2003. That's part of his testimony, that he was this person in 2003. And Kara does oversee the Keck observatories, and that was their project.
Okay, Mr. Ng.
Mm-hmm.
Not at issue here. If she wants to ask him the questions with regard to NSF and the Historic Preservation Council, she can ask those questions of him with regard to the TMT project. That's what I'm objecting to. She's asking him those issues with regard to the Keck project.
Well, he objected to my earlier question, so I'm trying to lay the foundation that he should be aware of it, because he's been involved in the exact same processes regarding federal review, which is one of the requirements of the CDUP, that they have to be in compliance with federal review as well as state and county.
And how does that tie to TMT?
Because TMT has not conducted those same federal level review that he had to go through earlier.
I'll overrule the objection. Allow you to lay your foundation
Okay.
efficiently, please.
Right. Are you aware that the TMT has not conducted either a federal level environmental review or a historic preservation review process?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that the federal review process would include compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act?
The federal government is not involved in the way that, in fact, requires that review.
Okay. And they're not in, okay. I'm going to quote something for you and then ask you another question. The National Historic Preservation Act, as amended in 1992, defines an undertaking, which means a project, activity, or program funded in whole or in part under the direct or indirect jurisdiction of a federal agency, including those carried out on behalf of a federal agency or those carried out with federal assistance. And then it goes on for a little bit more, but are you aware of that, what the definition of an undertaking?
There has been, this would be something the NSF would determine, and they have not determined that they have that role, as I understand it.
But it doesn't have to necessarily be NSF. It's whoever receiving federal funds.
Well, the federal funds have to come from organizations like the NSF, which determine whether or not this is something that's required.
That's correct. So are you aware that the TMT has received federal funding and federal assistance in the form of National Science Foundation funding?
We have, but not for purposes that are covered by those laws, as I understand it.
Do you know what those purposes are?
The purposes of what the funding we have had has been for community community outreach to the national U.S. community, and to developing a plan for possible future federal contribution. But they are not, in fact, involved in funding the construction, design, or construction of TMT.
Okay, I'm going to put some things on the projector. Do I have to turn it on? Lui Kwan, can you turn it on, please? Sorry, Tim. Oh, it's on? Okay. This one first.
Your Honor, if these are exhibits, I'd like to have them identified, first of all. If they're not exhibits, then they shouldn't be shown to the witness.
Yeah, they're exhibits. It's already it's been shown before. This one is an NSF grant for $18 million. And it's a cooperative agreement. And it is the design and development of the giant segmented mirror that is the best ranked, and also, sorry, I'm trying to read which one it's saying. Okay.
What's the exhibit number?
B01B.
B.
Yeah. It's in there already, but you can put it up just so he can. I just wanted to show it to him. Thank you. Are you familiar with that exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. Because they're not here. Okay. Or did I give it to him? Then- Okay, okay. Yeah, okay. Let me just put that one. Okay, yeah. So are you familiar with that $18 million?
Yes.
Okay, so would you yeah. And that, would you identify what that 18 million is for?
It was for the studies that were going on at the time. These were the period where we were actually designing the telescope, and at that time, NSF was involved in some of the site testing in South America, which is part of that $18 million, for instance. But they were not. The NSF, of course, it's up to NSF to determine what laws they have to follow with respect to these things, and they did not determine that this required an EIS or anything like that.
Okay, I'm going to show you another one. And this is, we don't have it uploaded yet, but we have copies for everyone. We're going to identify it as B101Q.
Could you give a copy to Mr. Ng first, please?
Yeah. Kale, do we have the copy? Where are they? Sorry. She has to help me. Sorry, I don't mean to be unorganized. Yeah. You have to ask her if you can approach. Just do it so that they can do it. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Kale. I need that one put up there. Yeah. I'm going down the list. See, like this. Going down the list. That one, that one, and that one. I need all of those out, so I don't know where they are. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Just taking a moment here, trying to figure out where our paperwork went.
Your Honor, I thought there were copies for each of the parties.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure where they are. They might be in there.
Well, then I object to the use of the witness. 'Cause witness, I won't have a copy of the exhibit, and they'll be asking him questions from it.
I'm only gonna. Well, he can look at it and then I'll pass it to you because
Is
I'm
this
just gonna ask a simple question.
Hang on. 5.01Q?
Yeah, we
Let me
haven't.
let me hand back this copy.
Okay.
I
thank
can,
you.
if you could please give that to Mr. Ng.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lui Kwan.
I'm sorry. We had all of them made, so I just don't know where they are.
Could you show your copy to Mr. Lui Kwan? Or
I
you don't have your
them
copy?
yet.
But it's not uploaded yet.
Yeah, this one is not. Yeah.
They're just identifying. It's not uploaded.
We can just share it, Your Honor. We'll
Thank
just
you.
share it.
Thank you.
Looked
Yes.
at it, it was, unless he has one that has all of them up there. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Anyways, okay, so,
So you've handed B.01Q
yeah,
that you've identified and intend to have uploaded.
yeah.
And a copy has been given to this witness as well
Yes.
as Mr. Ng, and Mr. Ng is sharing with Mr. Lui Kwan.
Yeah, thanks.
So
Okay, I just have a simple question. This one specifically is for $1 million, and I guess it's you and Mr. Michael Bolte and Gary Sanders, I believe, were the proponents of this grant. Is that correct?
Yes.
And are you aware of any other grants that NSF has awarded to the TMT
No, I think these are the two.
for any other reason?
No. To TMT?
Yeah,
No, I don't. Nothing comes to mind.
nothing for the STEM program?
STEM program, I'm not aware, I don't.
Okay. Anyways, so I'll get on with the questions. You were saying that your testimony was that NSF needed to be the one to trigger it. But it also says that the one who gets federal funds is also responsible for federal compliance. Shall I read that? I'm going to read an excerpt from Exhibit A11, which is the Cultural Resource Management Plan for the University of Hawaii. I'm going to read first from page 1-29. I'll read it for you. The National Historic Preservation Act first passed in 1966 and subsequently amended, covers the treatment of historic properties on federal lands under federal control and or affected by federal funded activities or undertakings. The National Historic Preservation Act governs the identification and treatment of historic properties by public and private entities in order to ensure that, quote, the historical and cultural foundation of the nation should be preserved as a living part of our community life and development in order to give a sense of orientation to the American people, unquote. And then on page 1-3, I will read this part for you. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act governs how federal agencies and undertaking must proceed in order to...
Hold on. You need to slow down a little.
Oh, sorry. In order to ensure the appropriate treatment of historic properties affected by the undertaking. There's a federal statute listed 16 U.S.C. 470F. The head of any federal agency having direct or indirect jurisdiction over a proposed federal or federally assisted undertaking in any state, and the head of any federal department or independent agency having authority to license any undertaking shall, prior to the approval of the expenditures of any federal funds on the undertaking or prior to the issuance of any license or approval of expenditure, as in the case may be, take into account the effects of the undertaking on any district, site, building, structure, or object that is included or is eligible for the inclusion in the National Register. The head of such a federal agency shall afford advisory council on historic preservation established under Title II of this act a reasonable opportunity to comment with regard to such an undertaking. Almost done. Then I have my question. It states, given this definition, it is clear that the activities within the UH management areas that are carried out with federal funding, an example from the National Science Foundation or the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, are covered by Section 106, National Historic Preservation Act. In addition, any activities that require a federal permit, license, or approval from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under the Endangered Species Act. Service under the Endangered Species Act also come under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So, my question, Mr. Stone, is have you ever talked to the National Science Foundation regarding either doing a federal environmental impact statement or a federal level Section 106 consultation?
It's my understanding that's not required.
Okay. Because you have read these rules and understand them?
That's what I'm told. I'm not an expert on all those rules, but that's what I've been told.
But who is telling you this?
Lawyers?
Oh, the lawyers.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, in the past, Yale University has paid money, I believe in the amount of $14 million, to acquire time on the Keck Observatory. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that, but I was not involved.
Okay. Have you or TIO or TMT Corporation negotiated any state, negotiated with the state or Board of Land and Natural Resource for a percentage of any proceeds that might come in from other places the use of the TMT?
I don't have any knowledge of this details. I have not been involved.
Will TMT look to patent any of the technology that they might produce on the TMT telescope?
Patents?
Yeah.
I assume we would. I don't know. I don't know that we have patented anything, but we certainly, as a corporation, could do so, or as an LLC.
Yes. And then if that were true, would you then negotiate with the state for a share of those proceeds since it will be being used on ceded lands?
Objection, Your Honor, also speculation.
Sustained.
Wax Foundation.
So let me ask you this. You have not approached the state to have any kind of working relationship with the state to have the state be able to share in any proceeds from the TMT, such as proceeds from patenting or proceeds from other nations that might want to get time on the telescope, such as the $14 million that was given to the KEC, right, from Yale University?
Mr. A.
Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond the scope of direct. It lacks foundation, and it calls for speculation.
Basically, I'm just asking him the question. If he's the guy, I want to know if he has considered working with the state to make sure that some of the proceeds on these kinds of things can be shared with the state.
You're assuming there are going to be proceeds.
True.
So you need to lay that foundation first.
Okay.
Secondly, it does go beyond the scope of his direct testimony, so I'm wondering where we're going with this.
I think where I want to go is I'm trying to ask really about fair market as well, fair market rent and things like that.
Okay, it sounds to me like the two are not connected, fair market rent and proceeds from patents of some kind. So if you're going to ask about fair market rent, we need to go someplace else.
Yeah, no, I'll ask about that.
All right.
Is the TIO or TMT paying fair market rent, lease rent, for the use of the lands on MaunaKea?
We have agreed to funding, and it will grow to about $1 million per year in about 8 or 10 years, as I recall.
So
that's part of the agreement, part of the sublease.
So how did you determine the $1 million?
UH determined that.
Okay, and do you know how they did?
No, I don't.
Okay. Are you aware that the state requires fair market lease rent for the use of ceded lands?
No.
Okay.
But UH determined the amount, so UH should have been aware if that's the case.
Okay, interesting. So, sorry. So how would let's say a University of Moscow, for example, how would they get time on the TMT?
They would have to work with one of the members who will have time.
So they would have to partner with, say, UH or Caltech?
Yes, that would be one way, yes.
Okay. So are you aware of UH selling any of their time?
I don't think anyone sells any time that I know of.
Well, you are aware of the Yale University, right? That they sold that
It was not a sale,
time.
they are a partner.
Oh.
Just like all the other members of TMT are partners.
Okay, well, let's go to that. How much money have all of the partners given? You listed them earlier. Can you tell us how much they've given?
They have committed to the observatory a certain level of funding, which amounts to about 75% the cost of the 75 to 80% of the cost.
What would that be?
That's their commitment.
The cost of what?
Cost of the telescope.
So that would be 75 or 80% of 1.4 billion.
Yes, well, not quite, but yes, something like that.
And what are the percentages of each of the partners?
I really don't want to go into that.
Well,
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. It is beyond the scope of his direct. It's not an issue for this proceeding, and she's asking for proprietary information.
I'm sorry, but that funding it should not be proprietary.
No, you're asking for percentages. That's the proprietary part. Just a minute, please. Yes, Mr. Ching?
I would challenge the characterization of these as being proprietary information as they have been published.
No, I'm not going to take objections like this. Ms. Pisciotta, the cross-examiner, will deal with the objections. At the appropriate time, anyone who wishes to cross-examine at their time will be able to deal with whatever objections are laid out at that point. So, and Ms. Pisciotta has been doing very well. But since you're approaching the... So the objection is that by asking for the percentages, you're asking for information that is private.
Can I try this? Are these funds, for example, the funds from India?
From where?
From India, for example.
Thank you.
Are those government funds, or are those from private investors from India?
It's the Department of Science and Technology.
Is that a government?
Yes.
Okay. The funds for China, coming from China to the TMT, are those government funds or are those a private entity funds?
Government funds.
From the government of China?
Yes.
Okay. And then from Japan, are those government funds?
Government funds.
Okay. And University of California?
Private.
Is the University of California private?
They raise private funding.
But they're not private, although
They
they're...
raise private funding. That's all I can say.
You're asking about the funding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's telling you it's private funds. You're not asking if the University of California is a private
partner.
or public institution, right?
Yeah. Well, it's my understanding the University of California is a huge institute. It's basically the whole UC system, right? So that includes Caltech. That would include...
Yes, I get that.
Yeah.
But are you asking, is the question to this witness
Yeah.
whether the institution is private or public, or the funds are private or public?
Both, actually.
Well, he's answering your funds question, so you
Okay.
need to clarify or split them.
Okay. Yes, you did answer. Thank you. I want to know if it is your testimony the University of California, which is the UC system, I guess, is private funding only.
I can't tell you.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Yeah, and I don't really understand the question. If you're asking if the University of California is privately funded?
Well, I believe that they are both private and public, and I believe that UC is specifically involved in this project, and Caltech, which I believe is private. So I'm just asking where, if the university system itself is giving any funds.
Okay.
But I can go with that. I mean, he's kind of answered that.
He's answered the question of the funds that are given to TMT, private or public, as relating to the various partners.
Okay.
So that question has been answered, but you're not going someplace else, right?
No, I do have a couple more questions just
All right.
to finish up. Is the University of Hawaii a partner?
No.
Does TMT have an arrangement to give the university observing time on TMT?
Yes.
And how much observing time is that?
7.5%.
7.5%? Okay, so do you know what the percentage generally is for the majority of the observatories on Mauna Kea?
No, I don't.
You're not familiar with the 10 or 20% given by Keck or?
I'm familiar with Keck only.
And how much percentage of time is UH given?
10% in Keck 1 and 15% in Keck 2.
Okay. Why is TMT so small?
TMT is a much more expensive facility.
Objection, Your Honor. We will stipulate that TMT is small, but the relative percentages of viewing time is really not relevant, not material to the Conservation District use permit. So I'm objecting to this line of questioning.
Well, I think the answer was already given, so please go forward.
Okay. And is it your understanding that the university does not itself collect any of the rent? Like, for example, the $1 million that you were referring to. Who collects that rent? Or who do you have to give it to?
I think the rent, some of it goes to the Office of MaunaKea Management, and some of it goes to OHA.
And how much goes to OHA?
20%, that's my recollection.
And you know that for certain?
No,
you have receipts?
I don't know that for certain.
Okay. And then what goes to the state directly?
Well, isn't OHA part of the state?
That's debatable. But that's not my question. What part does go to the state itself, like Board of Land and Natural Resource?
Objection, Your Honor. Last Foundation, Dr. Stone has testified that TMT has a sublease with UH, not with the state.
Ms. Pisciotta, could you clarify that, please?
I'm sorry, what was his objection? I got distracted.
So I'll ask Mr. Ng to repeat his
There's
objection.
no foundation. So why would TMT be paying the state anything?
Well, because it's state land, and
So maybe you need to establish who the payment is made to.
yeah.
And if this witness knows, then he'll tell you. And if he doesn't know, then
Okay. Do you know who collects the $1 million? Do you know who collects it?
It's my understanding that 80% goes to Office of MaunaKea Management and 20% to OHA. I don't know how it's actually paid.
Okay. Well, who pays it then in the TMT structure? Who's responsible for that?
Well, TIO, we have an office which pays our commitments.
Okay.
And I just don't know who they send the check to. Sorry.
And there's no commitments that you're aware of that actually go to pay the state, the people of Hawaii for the use of ceded lands.
We pay rent, as I said. That's what we pay.
Mm-hmm. But none to the state.
Well,
sustained.
So you're not aware of any money that actually goes to the Board of Land and Natural Resource or is deposited into the general fund of the state, to the
Same
legislature?
objection, asked and answered.
Yeah, he answered at least twice.
Okay.
20% to OHA, 80% to OMKM. That's his knowledge.
Mm-hmm. are any of these, for example, is any of this in our record? Is there somewhere you could direct us where we could look?
Our record, meaning the record for the hearing?
Yeah, that demonstrate that this is news to me, that 20% goes to OHA, and, for example. I just don't know where is it, can we find it?
Objection, not material, not relevant.
I'm more concerned about the nature of the question, asking him to whether he knows all the documents that have been placed in the documents
Well,
library.
if he's aware that would be...
Then you need to ask him where he got that information.
Well, that's true. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry. Yes, where do you get that information from regarding money, 20% going to OHA?
I can't tell you how I learned that, but that's what I know.
Okay. And then, yes, and so my earlier question was, who in the TMT structure would know, if you could tell us that?
Well, I assume somebody in the controller's office would know who the check gets sent to.
The controller of
TIO.
TIO.
Yes, TIO is paying this money.
Okay. But who exactly would be responsible for overseeing that? You're the executive director,
That's right.
but who would be responsible for making sure your commitments were being honored?
I'm responsible to be sure it's honored, and as long as no one says it's not being honored, I don't have to worry about it. I'm sure somebody from the University of Hawaii would let me know if somehow we hadn't paid our bill.
But is there someone like a treasurer in the TMT organization?
We have a controller, yes.
And so the controller is the person who does what?
I think that's the person that writes the check.
Okay. And who's that person's name?
Aki Fuji.
Aki Fuji. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Aki Fuji.
Okay. I think, Your Honor, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pisciotta.
Okay, thank you. Oh, wait, I need to just make the record that we do want to maintain our objection that TIO is not on the application, and that we object to them being in the contested case hearing when they're not on the application. So,
Well, I stand by my earlier ruling. I think it was minute order
I just
10, dealing with the admission of parties and the bases. So I don't believe the bases was because they were on or not on the application. Nonetheless, your record is made.
okay.
Okay, Ms. Ward?
Ready?
Well, why don't we just take a 5-minute break, please, while you get set up.
Oh, yes. Yeah, right. Okay.
You're watching Naleo TV.
Contested case hearing for the 30-meter telescope project. A proceeding for the State of Hawaii, DLNR, Board of Land and Natural Resources.
You're watching Naleo TV.
Contested Case Hearing for the 30-meter telescope project, a proceeding for the State of Hawaii, DLNR, Board of Land and Natural Resources.
Dr. Stone, if we could ask you to please resume the stand. Fair enough. Sir, I'm going to remind you at this time that you remain, your testimony will continue under the oath you took earlier to tell the truth. Do you agree?
Yes.
All right. And I'm going to ask you to speak more directly into the microphone. Perhaps you can bring it a little closer to yourself. It helps when we can hear it loudly. So, Ms. Ward, are you ready?
As ready as I can be.
All right. Excellent.
Good morning, Dr. Stone.
Good
My
morning.
name is Deborah Ward.
All right.
Thank you for coming today. You state on page 4 of your testimony that after a multi-year evaluation of different sites and discussion with stakeholders in Hawaii, your collaborators selected MaunaKea. Were you at Caltech and the TMT board aware of the legal history of the Keck Outriggers project at the time that you decided to pursue Hawaii over Chile?
Yes.
Okay. And were the members of the TMT board aware of the legislative auditor's report on the management of Mauna Kea, which was published in 1998?
We may have been. I don't remember.
Those are exhibits B17E and B17J, which there was a review again in 2005 that discussed the continued mismanagement of Mauna Kea. Did your collaborators consider the assessment of the risks for siting the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea, which was commissioned by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation regarding the TMT project? It was published in October 26, 2007.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And this exhibit, which is B17AB, I'll share with you.
You want to project it? You want to project it?
I just wanted to point out what was said on page 8, which was the conclusion of that finding, which was conducted over a period of a year by Peter Adler and commissioned by Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation.
Your Honor, I'm going to object if she's going to read from the document or have him read from the document. The document speaks for itself.
Right. Ms. Ward, are you going to ask him a question about that?
I wanted to find out how he perceived the last 10 years since this was written and how the board is reacting now to the findings that were discussed in that document.
Okay, so would you have him read the pertinent sections silently?
I wanted to refresh his memory, but maybe that's not necessary.
He can read the pertinent sections to himself?
Okay, that would be fine. The pertinent section is the bottom paragraph of page 8.
Thank you.
Dr. Stone, in light of the findings in that document, which were published in 2007, do you find that the roadblocks that the TMT has run into with regard to legal actions has impeded the progress of the development of the project?
I'm sorry, it was a long.
Yeah. Well, how have your funders been reacting to what's happened since that document was published? And are your funders aware of that document?
Objection, Your Honor. Vague and ambiguous as to what is meant by funders. If she
Partners. May I say partners instead?
So there, it also lacks foundation.
Right.
So it's vague and ambiguous, lacks foundation. And he doesn't speak for the funders.
So I'm going to need to ask you to lay foundation. Okay. And I think Mr. Ng kind of told you what parts need to be laid.
Okay.
But I also am going to ask you to break up the question because it's
okay.
It sounds like there's a couple other questions in there.
Okay.
So
when this document was published and UC and Caltech were aware of it, did you share this document with the other partners that you approached?
I don't remember exactly what. This was 2007. We of course spent between this 2007 and 2009 when we made the decision to go to Hawaii to try to address the issues which were raised here. And so we thought we had done so in a satisfactory way in 2009 when we collectively, all members, agreed with this selection.
Okay. Were you informed that there had been decades of local opposition to building more observatories on the mountain when you chose the Hawaii site over Chile?
Well, we were certainly aware of this report.
Okay. Why did you decide to push ahead and do it anyway?
Hawaii, the MaunaKea is the best site in the Northern Hemisphere. And by best, I mean in the sense of the turbulence is very low, and that means the starlight is not blurred and, defocused. So we did site testing at 5 sites around the world, and Mauna Kea was right there with the best. And in the Northern Hemisphere, it was better than any other. And in addition to that, many of the partners had facilities already here, so there was infrastructure which would in fact benefit from having the TMT on Mauna Kea as well.
So the other sites that you reviewed, including the Canary Islands, which is now your second choice, do they also have infrastructure and other partners in the area with observatories?
At the time, we had not looked at the Canary Islands. That was not one of the 5 sites. We'd looked at Baja California and at 3 sites in Chile.
Okay. According to your testimony, your board came to a decision on the site selection on July 21st, 2009. Is that your statement?
Yes.
And did the collaborators have an opportunity to see the draft EIS published on July 7th before making its decision?
I don't remember exactly what we did when, to be quite honest.
So would you say that since the decision was made 2 weeks after the publication of the draft EIS, that they saw it or didn't see it?
I don't remember what the timing was.
After the final EIS was published, did the TMT board consider and understand the depth of opposition in the public and agency responses?
We thought we did.
Okay. Are you aware that Judge Nakamura of the Third Circuit Court has vacated the BLNR's consent to the TMT sublease?
Yes.
Are you aware that he ruled that a contested case hearing was required prior to the board's decision?
I have not seen the written, so I would say no, we're not really aware of what the judgment really has been.
Have you been in contact with the Gordon Moore Foundation, the TMT's largest donor, about the legal limbo that TMT has found itself in now?
They are certainly aware.
Okay. What has the foundation said to you regarding Caltech and TMT board's pursuit of the Hawaii site in the face of past and future legal challenges?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, is the board now reconsidering its choice of Hawaii as a site?
Our stated position continues to be what it has been for this year, and that is that MaunaKea remains our preferred site, but we have a plan now to start construction on a mountain in April of 2018. And in order to give us some assurance that that can happen, we now have a plan B that we're working to develop.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a drop-dead date for when you will make that decision?
Well, we have to do it in a time so that we can begin construction in April 2018.
Okay. You state on page 4 of your written direct that TIO members have agreements, budgets, and plans for funding the construction phase of the $1.4 billion project, but you do not cite funding for operations and maintenance. Can you tell us what funding has been received from the NSF, National Science Foundation, and what funds from NSF are expected or anticipated in the future?
First of all, I don't know what I don't say anything about operations, do I, in my testimony?
No, you don't.
So you suggest. So anyway, the point is the agreement we have with our partners includes their share of operations. So if they're a 10% partner, they will be 10% of the operations costs. So it's not, their funding is tied together. All of that has been part of the company agreement.
Okay. Do you anticipate asking for NSF funds for operation and maintenance in the future?
We have a cooperative agreement to prepare a plan for that for them to consider at some point.
So may I ask you, since these are public documents, is it true that you've already received $18 million and continue to receive funds of $1.2 million over a 5-year period from NSF?
Yes, that's in fact we covered the first of those already.
Okay. There was a Scientific American article in December 2015 entitled Telescope Wars, and it describes the competition for funding between 3 competing telescopes. Are you familiar with the article?
In general, I'm familiar with the issues anyway, let's put it that way.
One of the astronomers quoted said that if there had been 2 telescopes competing for funds instead of 3, both might be nearing completion at the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars less. Do you agree with that assessment?
No, I can't agree with that.
Okay, and that article goes on to say, and I'm asking if this is true, they are still searching for an additional $270 million. The project's current best guess for its telescope debut. Sure.
270 million.
Yes, $270 million. The project's current best guess for its telescope debut is sometime in the early 2020s. So is it true, Dr. Stone, that they're still looking for another $270 million?
For TMT?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we as I said, we do have still room for an additional partner.
Okay, an additional partner, I see.
Or partners. That's once we have a site, then we can address that remaining partnership.
I'd like to bring you to attention 2 documents that are not yet offered into evidence, and one of them is it's an online article published in Nature document 479, 18-19, and we're going to offer it as Exhibit B17AE. And the title of that is Mega Telescopes Look for Support. And I'll give the counselor a copy. And also Science Insider, which was published in 9/20/2011. And I'll share that as well. Yes, that is B17AG.
Not F?
I'm sorry.
Your first one was E,
AE, yes.
and the second one is,
AG.
what's F?
F is...
Something else?
Yes, is the 18 million, a documentation of the 18 million received.
Okay, thank you. So you have copies for Mr. Ng and the university? I don't need one. If you could give it to Mr. Ng and Mr. Lui Kwan.
Part of the challenge of trying to figure out how to, AE and AG. Yeah. AF, I can give you AF. Want to see it.
Your Honor, just a clarification on the exhibit. They're both marked B17AE, Alpha Echo. Yes.
I don't have a printer at home, so this is all Office Depot effort.
I understand.
Okay. So in B17AE, there is a statement. Let's make some plans even though the money comes later.
Could you direct the witness to that area, which is first page, second page?
Okay.
I don't.
You don't have a copy.
You don't
I
have
don't have a copy, so.
In 2011,
Wait, just a minute. Let's get it.
and this is AE. You have AG as well, but let's look at AE first. And on the second page of that document. I apologize. Yes, it is the second page, and it's the third paragraph down, starting with Ellis.
Starting with,
Let's see. No, it's the page before that. Yes. So
you want the witness to read that?
if you don't mind, I'll read it. It's just as easy. But Ellis
No,
says
it's
that-
not just
Oh,
as easy.
Okay. Okay.
So you would like him to read the paragraph that begins,
That's
Ellis
marked,
says
yes.
that NSF.
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
The witness could read that paragraph, please.
This one right here? Ellis?
The one that starts with Ellis, yes.
Well, I have to get over here where I can read it.
Okay.
Ellis says that NSF backing would help the TMT to nail down other partner nations, especially China, which wants to see U.S. government action before it commits completely. He adds that even if the NSF lacks money for construction, it could become a partner by paying operating expenses later on, and holding a competition might compel the agency to find money in the future. The NSF has to rise to the challenge of lobbying for facilities, says Ellis. It has been too passive.
Do you find that that statement was a true statement, that you would be, that the TMT or the TIO would be seeking to become a partner later by paying operating expenses later on?
That's one possibility.
Okay. And how much do you expect that you would be seeking?
Well, that really will depend on where the site is. So until we get a site, it's hard to actually have the final numbers that we would be dealing with.
Okay. So given that you will be pursuing, or may be pursuing, would you be pursuing NSF funds if you were in the Canaries? Let me ask that.
I'm sorry,
Would you be pursuing NSF funds if you were to build in the Canary Islands?
that would certainly be a possibility.
Okay. So it doesn't matter whether it's built on domestic soil or international soil?
No, NSF does run Gemini South in Chile, runs the ALMA, the NSF share of the ALMA project in Chile. So it does have facilities other than the U.S.
Okay. So the state required environmental assessment was prepared pursuant to the state of Hawaii's HRS 343. And yet there are a number of triggers identified in the document that would indicate that NEPA, environmental review, is required. And that's, you've talked a little bit about that already. So do you believe that if federal funding were sought for operations and maintenance, would a NEPA EIS be required at that point?
That wouldn't be my understanding, but I'm not a lawyer, so.
What is your understanding?
My understanding is that if it's operations only, or that that the plan would not be required because there's no construction money involved.
So your understanding is that only construction money would contribute to requiring a NEPA EIS?
That's my recollection, yes. But we really haven't addressed those issues yet.
What do you think the appropriate time for addressing those issues
Once
would
we
be?
have a site.
And obtaining the site, wouldn't the obtaining the site require an environmental assessment in Hawaii before you could obtain the site, as in obtaining the permit?
We have an EIS in Hawaii.
You do have an EIS.
That's right.
You do not have a permit.
That's right. And we're hoping that's what this hearing is about, right?
But if you did get the site and you got NSF funding in the future and needed to do a federal EIS, when would that be appropriate?
That would be up to the NSF.
Not, well,
It's a federal action. It would be up to the NSF,
yes.
just like it was for the outriggers.
So if the Section 106 consultation required by the federal government would be required before the construction were to take place and before the project initiation, and you anticipated funds in the future, would you not need to begin the Section 106 process earlier?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for legal conclusion.
Ms. Ward?
There's no one higher than this person. And if he is not advised by his staff that there are requirements, how does one go higher than this? I don't know.
Are you asking him to provide a legal conclusion?
Well, I'm asking whether his staff has discussed this with him. Maybe I didn't ask that yet, but I guess since he says he has not read the documents that are required to be complied with, and he relies on his staff, has your staff discussed this issue with you?
So are you responding to my question?
I'm so confused. Let's try
It's a
again.
simple question. Are you asking him to provide a legal opinion?
Actually, no. I'm trying to find out what plan has been set in place for the eventual request for NSF funds. And my understanding is that if there is a plan to request NSF funds, the federal process requires that Section 106 be conducted.
Okay, I don't want argument. I don't want narrative.
Okay.
Mr. Ng?
Well, then the question also lies foundation, because it's not been established that they have formulated such plans or that they have even investigated that. He's only said it's possible in the future.
So I'm going to ask you to do this.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to do this, please. You can ask the question to set the foundation. And as to the direct question I asked you about legal opinion, you can ask that question after you set the foundation, as long as you qualify it, knowing that he is not a lawyer. At least I don't think he's a lawyer.
Okay.
Okay? So go ahead and set the foundation first.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to ask the question, you can ask it with the qualification that I'm not asking for a legal opinion, but in your position as the executive director. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
I'll try. Dr. Stone, in your position as executive director, has your staff informed you that a NEPA EIS must be conducted prior to the receipt or use of federal funding?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And in your discussions with your staff and your lawyers, have you ascertained that if funding were received in the future, that you would need to do a Section 106 process as soon as possible?
We would like to do it as soon as we made a decision on the site and that we have an agreement that this is something that the NSF would want to do. We don't have that agreement.
Mm-hmm. So what do you premise your decision on the site to be?
Well, on which site? That's what it is. Will the site be Hawaii or will it be Plan B?
Yes. And in order to determine whether you will receive, whether you will have it here in Hawaii or somewhere else, what are your criteria and what need to be in place?
Our choice is to build it in Hawaii if we can get a permit in a timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's your choice, but what do you need to have in place in order to make that decision?
Well, we have to have a permit and we have to have access to MaunaKea. Mm-hmm. To choose MaunaKea. Not having access doesn't get us a telescope.
Right. Okay. So if you got a permit and then someone were to raise an issue with regard to compliance with Section 106 and you had to stop the project, has your staff considered that process?
That's very hypothetical. Our plan is that to have a site so that we can start construction in April 2018, at which time there will be no NSF money. So we will start with the money we have and start the site work in 2018, and that will give us time to raise the rest of the money from whoever.
So I'm still trying to figure out how to lay the foundation so that I can ask, how would you go back in time to conduct what should have been done before you started construction?
There is no NSF money involved in starting construction, so there's no requirement that we do a federal EIS before we start construction.
If you anticipate formulating the plan, is what you said. If you anticipate formulating a plan to ask NSF for money in the future, does that then require that you conduct the essential environmental review prior to asking?
No, we don't have to ask before asking. We don't have to do that before asking. We need to have a plan for doing this, and that's our job, is to create the plan that works. Mm-hmm. And once we have a site, we can do that.
Thank you for that answer. You said earlier that you were aware that there was cumulative impact due to astronomy on the natural and cultural resources. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are you aware that the additional increment of this project will add to cumulative impact?
But not in a significant way, according to the reports I've seen.
Do you find that subjective?
That's the report. I can accept the report.
The EIS, the second paragraph on the executive summary, which is S9, says the project would not significantly increase or reduce existing level of cumulative impact due to all past and present activities. Would you agree that the TMT project would be an additional increment that does not reduce the level of impact?
Are you saying would I agree with the statement which you just read?
Would you agree that the TMT project would be an additional increment? I'll ask that first.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Vague and ambiguous. An additional increment to what?
The level
Not
of
been
cumulative
identified.
impact.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Would you agree that the TMT project would be an additional increment to the level of cumulative impact?
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree that it would not reduce the level of cumulative impact?
Yes.
Thank you. Does the TMT project propose strategies specific to the TMT project site to mitigate the significant adverse and substantial cumulative impact to natural and cultural resources?
Well, we have done a number of things in the design of the telescope, which can be discussed in great detail by Gary Sanders, in order to reduce its visual impact, for instance, in order to reduce the impact with respect to wastes. We have everything comes down that goes up. I think we have done a number of things which are there to address the impact.
Okay. Are you aware that rules for determining if a project meets the 8 criteria do not include funds for community benefit purposes?
No, I don't know that.
In terms of decommissioning, I'm going to go on to another section. On page 4 of your testimony, you say the facility, if permitted, might begin its useful life in 2027. And on page 5 of your testimony, that the TMT will be decommissioned at the end of its useful life. Are you aware that the general lease for MaunaKea Science Reserve expires in 2033?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to be confident that an extension of the general lease would give the TMT an option of continuing beyond the expiration date?
That will be an issue which the members will have to address when they decide on the site.
Mr. Sanders said in the last contested case hearing that decommissioning would take as long as 5 years. Do you consider that an accurate statement?
It's a reasonable estimate.
Okay. Would you say that in the event that the general lease is not extended, the decommissioning would begin in 2027, the same year the facility would begin its useful life?
I think that it would, in fact, not begin, but the plan there has to be a plan 5 years before, I believe.
Okay.
This is an issue which the board will have to address when they choose the site.
I understand the board has chosen its site already, back in 2009.
But it does not have a site at this time. It has to make a decision between Hawaii and the Canary Islands. Mm-hmm. That's a decision it has to make.
Well, the board has expended a lot of money in Hawaii so far. Did they consider the general lease expiration in their
decision? Yes, that was part of our discussion when we chose the site in the first place.
Okay. The TMT website once described the TMT as a pilot for a 100-meter telescope. That statement has been since removed from the website. But can you tell us a little bit about whether this is actually a pilot for a 100-meter?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And can you explain whether the James Webb telescope in space will, when that is deployed, whether that will be larger or more effective than the 30-meter?
It will be different than the 30-meter telescope, being in space. It's a 6.5-meter mirror instead of 30 meters, so you can see the size is quite a bit smaller, and the amount of area to collect light is smaller, and the angular resolution is not as good as for the TMT.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ward. Let's take a lunch break until 1 o'clock, and at which time Mr. Ching will commence.
You're watching Naleo TV.
Contested case hearing for the 30-meter telescope project, a proceeding for the State of Hawaii, DLNR, Board of Land and Natural Resources.